Good evening, everyone. So today we will discuss about the digestive system of a horse. On the paper, the situation stated that what will happen when a horse ate an apple. So before I begin our discussion, so I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tam Yang and my metric number is 188722. And I will start introduce my group members from my left.
Apples are mainly composed of carbohydrate and water and are rich in simple sugar like fructose, sucrose, glucose, pectin, and energy. So cells largely contribute to fruit texture characteristic. In apple, like other fleshy fruit, they are made of pectin, hemicellulose, and cellulose, together with some structural proteins. This apple sour polysaccharide composition and structure varies with genetics, development stages, and growth condition. And the relative content of the apple of the molecule cell of apple sugars represented by galacturonic acid attributed to pectin and glucose from cellulose and hemicellulose, which increase during apple ripening, and this galactose and arabinose content will decrease during fruit expansion and further declines during ripening. And carbohydrate from the apple actually provide energy to horse, and the non-structural carbohydrates such as the starch and glucose from grains, legumes, and pectins from fiber are readily utilized as energy sources for the horse. And the enzyme amylase will eventually break down the non-structural carbohydrates into glucose and simple sugar, which are then absorbed in the small intestine of the horse. And meanwhile, the structural carbohydrates such as the cellulose and hemicellulose in plants will be broken down by bacterial enzyme in the cecum and colon of horse, and this microorganism will convert this carbohydrate to volatile fatty acid such as the acetate, propionate, butyrate, and this provide about 30 to 70% of the horse energy requirement. So as we know that many of us like to feed horses with apples for treats, but if too much of overfeeding apple to horse, it can actually cause a disease called colic and may lead to founder. We may uh, can we actually can give apple to horse, but maybe only with one or two pieces of fruit only, because it's very dangerous if for in case where the horse have access to one pole fruit from a wild tree, or someone dump a basket of spoiled apple over the fence, and the horse thinking that it is a treat for horse. This eventually lead to other diseases like bloated, because as we know, the when the horse eat apple, they may choke, and when they choke, they cannot throw up or vomit the apple, and this may cause bloated, and this bloated condition will eventually cause death to horse. So I think that's all. Thank you.
So I will be talking about horse digestive system. So horses do not have multi-compartment stomach as cattle do. The equine digestive tract can be divided into two sections, the foregut and the hindgut. The foregut consists of the stomach and small intestine, while the hindgut or large intestine is made up of a cecum and colon. The equine digestive tract is unique and because it digests portion of its feed enzymatically first in the foregut and ferments in the hindgut. So firstly, the digestive system start in the stomach. The digestive system start in the mouth with the chewing process releasing saliva that act as a lubricant for the food passing down the esophagus and into the stomach. The equine stomach is only able to hold 2 to 3 gallons at a time, making it the smallest stomach in relation to body size of all of our domestic animals. Depending on how big the meal is and what it contains, food may remain in the stomach as little as 15 to 30 minutes or as long as 12 hours. The next part of the tract is small intestine, approximately 70 feet in length. It is made up of three parts, which is the duodenum, jejunum, and then ileum. Food moves through the entire small intestine in as little as 30 to 60 minutes, but can take longer up to X hours. Small intestine is where most of the breakdown and the absorption of feed occurs. And the cecum and colon together can hold up to 32 gallons of fibrous material that slowly ferments over 2 to 3 days. And a key product of fermentation in the hindgut is a volatile fatty acid that are absorbed into the bloodstream and provide an important source of energy for the horse. That's all.
So now I will be talking about the digestion of the apples in the upper digestive tract of the horse. So first of all, the apples, when the horse eats the apples, first the apples will get crushed by the teeth in the mouth, which actually breaks down a bit of the cell walls, which after that enables, enzymatic work on it. So when the horse eats the apple gets chewed and it is mixed up with saliva, which is secreted from the saliva glands in the horse. So saliva contains alpha amylase, which actually hydrolyze two things inside the apple, which is amylopectin and amylose. So what happens to these two sugars is actually the alpha 1 to 4 glycosidic bonds are hydrolyzed by the salivary alpha amylase, which releases maltose and maltotriose, which is actually a component of three glucose components. So it also produces alpha dextrin and alpha limit dextrin, which is a branched oligosaccharide. However, when the horse digests these apples in the mouth, where salivary alpha amylase works on the apple, it only happens for a short time. So only a few of the carbohydrates and starch are actually processed. Once the apples are swallowed, it will go through the esophagus and it will enter the stomach, where alpha salivary amylase reaction is halted because the pH inside the stomach is too high for the alpha salivary amylase to function, because the pH of the amylase itself, the optimum pH is around 7, like that. However, the pH in the stomach is 4, which is too acidic for the enzyme, so it gets deanimated.
So I would like to continue with the stomach of the horse. So the stomach of the horse is small in relation to the size of the animal and make up of only 10% of the capacity of the digestive system, or 9 to 15 liters in volume. The apple is already releasing soluble sugars for absorption and undergoing bacterial fermentation to produce lactic acid. Under normal circumstances, as the hydrochloric acid mix in with stomach ingesta, the pH will drop fermentation slows down and eventually stops. This is an important process because if it does not occur and fermentation continues, the relatively non-distensible fixed volume stomach will be very quickly filled with gas and with little ability to release pressure through the esophagus. Gastric colic may result, or in extreme cases, a ruptured stomach lining. As the feed moves through the stomach, the next section is the fundic region. So the pH drops decrease to around 5.4 and fermentations regains to hot. Pepsin and stomach acid initiate the digestion and degradation of lipids and proteins. The final section of the stomach is the pyloric regions when the stomach joins the small intestine. The pH drops further to 2.6 which virtually eliminates all fermentable lactobacteria. So the mixture of feeds and saliva mix with the acid produced by stomach. When a horse stomach is empty, the acid destroys the non-protected squamous cells of sulcus casus region of the stomach. This causes the stomach lining to alterate.
Now I will explain about how the excess glucose can affect the absorption in the small intestines. Dietary carbohydrates, when digested and absorbed in the small intestine of the horse, provide a substantial fraction of metabolisable energy. However, if levels in diets exceed the capacity of the equine small intestine to digest and absorb them, the environment of the hindgut, it can be disrupted since high levels of alpha-linked sugars and starch reach it. There are bacteria living higher up in the small intestine that live on starch and sugars in competition with their host, the horse. If we provide too much starch and sugar in the diet, the horse's own enzymes and absorptive processes can cope and the sugars flood into the hindgut along with those bacteria that feed off them. Their end products are more acidic than the fiber fermenters, which results in the destruction of the environment, and this can lead to changes in the populations, death of the fiber fermenters, and a rise in toxic end products called endotoxins. When starch is fermented by various bacteria, one of the main end products is lactic acid. In the small intestine, this is used by other bacteria that can convert it to other products. For whatever reason, this does not happen in the hindgut, so starch reaching this area without being absorbed will produce lactic acid, and this acidification will add to the process of environment change. And the high levels of lactic acid also can cause a drop in pH. This interferes with fiber fermentation with possible symptoms of bloating, diarrhea, or excess fluid passed along with formed manure. This interferes with fiber fermentation with possible symptoms of bloating, diarrhea, or excess fluid passed along with formed manure. If severe enough, the intestinal lining can be damaged.
Okay, next is the digestion in the hindgut. The hindgut or large intestine consists of the cecum, large colon, small colon, rectum, and anus. Here is where the bulk of the digestion takes place. Digestion in the hindgut is largely microbial rather than enzymatic. Digestion in the hindgut is performed by billions of symbiotic bacteria which efficiently break down plant fibers and undigested starches into simpler compounds called volatile fatty acids, which can be absorbed through the gut wall. Compared with the digestive tract of ruminants, horses aren't as well suited to digesting products of grass with high crude fiber content, low-grade protein, and low levels of carbohydrates, starch, and fat. So, they make up for it by selectively grazing large amounts of feed each day. So, Iwan, what happens in the cecum? Do you know?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Nadhirah. The cecum is a blind sac approximately 1.2 meter long that can hold around 28 to 36 liters of feed and fluid. The cecum is a microbial inoculation vat similar to the rumen in the cow. The microbes break down feed that was not digested in the small intestine, particularly fibrous feeds like hay or pasture. The cecum is odd in design because its entrance and exit are both at the top of the organ. This means that the feed enters at the top, mixes throughout, and is then expelled up at the top. This design is the cause of problems if an animal eats a lot of dry feeds without adequate water or if a rapid change of diet occurs. Both may cause a compaction in the lower end of the cecum. This in turn produces pain or colic we call as in the horse. The microbial population in a cecum is somewhat specific as to what feedstock it can digest. It can take up to 2 to 3 weeks for the microbial population of the cecum to adjust to a new diet and return to a normal function. Feed will remain in a cecum for about 7 hours, allowing bacteria time to start breaking it down using the fermentation process. The microbes will produce vitamin K, B-complex vitamins, proteins and fatty acids. The vitamins and fatty acids will be absorbed, but later if any protein will be reabsorbed. So, if the horse ate too much apples, which apples consist of mainly starch, an overload of starch reaching the cecum and colon will cause digestive imbalance in the high gut. Starch digesting bacteria produce lactic acid and that increases the acidity of the hindgut, commonly known as the hindgut acidosis, which will be explained by ATIFA later. On the not-so-clinical side, upsetting the balance of microorganisms in the hindgut can lead to performance issues such as lethargic irritability, glutinous, difficulty in bending or collecting, and general discomfort in the horse. Then I will let Nadhirah to continue the further explanation of the hindgut of the horse. Thank you.
After the cecum, the digestion continues in the large colon. The large colon consists of the right and left ventral colons and dorsal colon. Microbial digestion continues here, and most of the nutrients made through microbial digestion are absorbed here, as well as B group vitamins produced by the bacteria and some trace minerals and phosphorus. The structure of the ventral colons are like a series of pouches. This design facilitates the digestion of large quantities of fibrous materials. But due to its design, it can become a large risk factor for colic disease. The pouches can easily become twisted and filled with gas due to the fermentation of the feed. Feed may reach here quicker, but however, it will stay for a longer time. So, all that is left now in the small colon are the undigested food. By now, most of the nutrients has already been digested or absorbed into the bloodstream. The main purpose of the small colon is to reabsorb excess moisture and return it into the horse's body. Due to this, fecal balls are formed and pass to the rectum, and eventually it will be excreted through the anus as manure.
Okay, since everyone has talked about the different digestive methods in different parts of the digestive tract, so now I will be talking about the many kinds of diseases that can occur when a horse eat too much apples. So for me, I will be talking about the equine metabolic syndrome. So equine metabolic syndrome, or EMS, is also called as a peripheral Cushing disease or insulin resistance. EMS has some similar signs to equine Cushing disease, but it is a different disease with different underlying causes. So, EMS is caused when fat cells or adipose tissue produce high levels of adipokines, which is a protein hormone that leads to an increase in cortisol. As a result of the abnormal hormone production, and in this case, the increase in cortisol, a horse's normal response to a hormone insulin is disrupted, resulting in high insulin insulin and glucose blood concentrations. So, the horse cannot properly metabolize carbohydrates, including starches and sugars, and that is gained from the digestion of apple. So, this mechanism can trigger the onset of laminitis. So, certain management practices such as feeding high-calorie diet to relatively inactive horses can predispose a horse to MS. So, in this case, like in this discussion, we'll be talking about why if the horse is fed with too much apples, so it can actually lead to MS. So, equine metabolic syndrome (EMS) is usually first recognized when chronic recurrent laminitis is seen in fat horses that lack other laminitis triggers. The most common clinical signs are abnormal intra-abdominal fat deposits or belly fat, as well as fat accumulation in the crest of the neck, over the rump, and in the shade of male horses. So these horses will usually have a high body condition score of 7, which is fleshy or higher. However, other equine managers have abnormal fat deposits. So, some of the treatment and prevention for insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance that can be improved, usually by dietary restriction and exercise, aimed at reversing the obesity. So, some of the strategies that can be used in the treatment of the disease includes reducing the calorie intake and eliminating simple sugars, in this case carbohydrates. This is actually one of the main components of the apple itself. Other methods to treat this disease is by feeding moderate quality grass hay at 1.5% of the ideal weight. And if the horse can tolerate pasture, use a grazing muzzle and allow the horse to graze in the mornings before the sugar content rises with sun exposure. And other acceptable feeds are grass hay cubes and beet pulp without molasses. And basically, finally, do not feed grains, carrots, apples, or sweet fish to those affected horses. So that's all for me. I shall pass to the next person to talk about the other diseases. Thank you.
So I will be talking about horse digestive system. So horses do not have multi-compartment stomach as cattle do. The equine digestive tract can be divided into two sections, the foregut and the hindgut. The foregut consists of the stomach and small intestine, while the hindgut or large intestine is made up of a cecum and colon. The equine digestive tract is unique because it digests portion of its feed enzymatically first in the foregut and ferments in the hindgut. So firstly, the digestive system start in the digestive system start in the mouth with the chewing process releasing saliva that act as a lubricant for the food passing down the esophagus and into the stomach. The equine stomach is only able to hold 2 to 3 gallons at a time, making it the smallest stomach in relation to body size of all of our domestic animals. Depending on how big the meal is and what it contains, food may remain in the stomach as little as 15 to 30 minutes or as long as 12 hours. The next part of the tract is small intestine, approximately 70 feet in length. It is made up of 3 parts, which is the duodenum, jejunum, and then ileum. Food moves through the entire small intestine in as little as 30 to 60 minutes, but can take longer, up to X hours. Small intestine is where most of the breakdown and the absorption of feed occurs, and the cecum and colon together can hold up to 32 gallons of fibrous material that slowly ferments over 2 to 3 days. And a key product of fermentation in the hindgut is a volatile fatty acid that are absorbed into the bloodstream and provide an important source of energy for the horse.
So hi, I will be explaining about the hindgut acidosis. So when the animal or horse was given fed with too much fruits or apples, it will get upset. And there is a condition which is called hindgut acidosis. So this hindgut acidosis refers to lowering of pH value, or we can call it increase in acidity in cecum or colon. This condition may affect on horse health and also its performance. This condition is actually caused by ourselves or feed management. Continuous flow of high fiber or carbohydrate can lead to acid in the cecum or colon to be unbuffered. And when the feed enters cecum or colon for bacterial fermentation, this bacterial fermentation will begin to convert the feed material into volatile fatty acids. So from this fermentation process, it will produce waste of lactic acid and also methane gas that will be accumulate in this fermentation vat or cecum or colon, and this can lead to problem health to the horse. So high value or high quantity of lactic acid can actually kill the beneficial bacteria, which is the bacteria that is used to for the fermentation. So when it kills these beneficial bacteria, it will cause malfunction of this digestive system, and this can cause another disease or problem. So when the methane gas, in the other hand, when the methane gas is too high, so it can lead to bloat, and this horse actually cannot burp or what we call belch because of these physiological features of their neck. So this also can lead to disease, and it may also be fatal to the horse because it cannot burp and it cannot belch. It actually will accumulate in the digestive system, and it will kill it within a day. So this is a serious problem actually for the horse. So the feed management need to be really the feed management really need to be consistent, and the feed also need to be given according to the balanced diet. So this horse